So we started a series on the Sermon on the Mount last week, and the Sermon on the Mount is what most scholars would agree is really the first kind of lengthy recorded sermon that Jesus gave. And so Jesus starts his ministry, and he starts preaching the simple message, which is repent, for the kingdom is at hand. And everyone in the area starts getting excited because for generations they've been waiting for this kingdom to come, and they've been waiting for God to come and free them from whatever country had been oppressing them at the time. Currently, it was the Roman Empire that was oppressing them. But Jesus really kind of gives them a different view of what this kingdom is. Because you see, they thought the kingdom was about them doing stuff, and they thought by them obeying the laws that they could force the kingdom to come. And Jesus comes and he totally does away with that, and he says, my kingdom is not about people doing things, but my kingdom is about God doing something in your heart. And he makes it very clear that first and foremost, before the kingdom is about us obeying rules or laws, that the kingdom he's interested in, the relationship he's interested in, comes from the heart. And not that we do things that come from the heart, not that we do things externally, even though we're not changed on the inside. So he preaches in Matthew chapter 5, this sermon. Seeing the crowds, he went up on the mountain, and when he sat down, his disciples came to him. And he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And the Sermon on the Mount, what Jesus is going to do is he's going to show people a new way to live. And he's going to show people that if you want to bring a taste of heaven, and if you want to bring a taste of what this kingdom is like, here's how you should live. But I want us to notice that Jesus doesn't start by giving people a list of things to do. Jesus always starts with not doing, but being. Right? And he's dealing very much with not people that are doing these tasks and serving him, but he's dealing very much with matters of the heart and matters of being. And I think we read this and we kind of forget how revolutionary Jesus' message really is. Picture for a moment, you go to the Taipei 101 New Year's Eve fireworks. I think we have a picture of that to make it seem more like you're there. Okay, does everyone feel the just engrossed in this atmosphere? And New Year's, as we know, it's a time where you want to really reflect and you want to think about how the year has gone. But it's also a time where you want to hope for the new year, that the new year would be better. I can't tell you how many Facebook posts I read from friends and students of how 2016 was just horrible. And they're hoping that 2017 would be much better. Now, pretend you're at this event and this very famous person stands up and they're going to give this speech that's supposed to inspire you. It's supposed to get you motivated. It's supposed to help you see that even though 2016 might have been horrible, that 2017 might be better. And this person stands up and they say something like this. They say, if your life is falling apart, you're blessed. If you've had some sort of serious illness or disease, you're blessed. If you've experienced hardships or if you've quit your job or lost your job, if you've collapsed financially and nothing is going right, you're blessed. If your friendships are falling apart, if you're hated at work, if the bus driver doesn't even want to pick you up, you're blessed. Right? I mean, can we imagine the shock of people in this event just wanting to be inspired, and all of a sudden this guy's giving this message that if your life looks like it's horrible, you're actually blessed. Can you imagine the shock of the audience hearing this? And if we put ourselves in that place where Jesus was speaking these same kind of words, can you imagine the shock of the people listening to him that all of a sudden he's saying, Blessed are those who mourn? There would have been shock. People would have been offended because to them, back in the days, you're blessed if you're Jewish, if you're clean ceremonially, and if you're a man, and if you're wealthy. Right? To them, that is the picture of what it means to be blessed. And then all of a sudden we have Jesus that is giving them a whole different picture. And he's saying, the people that we consider who are not blessed, you're actually the one who's blessed. There would have been a gasp. We'll try again later. But there would have also been a segment of the population that would have wept. Because there would have been a segment of the population of that crowd understanding that, hey, God hasn't forgotten about me. That even though the world may view me as being cursed even because I'm not well off, because I'm not doing well, that even though the world views me as cursed, God hasn't forgotten about me. And that segment of the population would have understood that God's kingdom is not a kingdom for those people that have it all together. God's kingdom is not a kingdom for people whose lives look perfect on the outside, whose lives are just going very well and very cleanly. But God's kingdom is available to those who are having a horrible year, to those that we would consider are not blessed, to those that we would maybe ask ourselves, did they do something wrong? Is God punishing them? Why is God not blessing them by our standards? That the kingdom is available to those whose lives are falling apart, right? But we still have to ask. I know I did, reading this, is how can you be blessed if you're poor in spirit? How does that even work? Like, can we wrap our minds around this idea of how can I be blessed if I'm poor in spirit? So to understand that, we're first going to look at what it means to be blessed. Okay? And the first thing is this. The blessed life is not a life devoid of suffering. The blessed life is not a life devoid of suffering. Because oftentimes, the way, at least in Western mindset, you think that God is blessing you, and I think the same thing at times when I have no financial hardship, when things are going smoothly, and when I'm not experiencing any sort of health issues or things that I'm not suffering, I'm not uncomfortable. We feel that, hey, I'm blessed because life is going so smoothly, so God must be on my side. But we clearly see here that what Jesus is pointing out, no. Being blessed has nothing to do with your circumstances. Being blessed has nothing to do with whether you're suffering or not. How many people have we heard that have gone on mission trips? And maybe you're interested in going in this Tacloban mission trip. And they come back, and what do they say? The people that we ministered to, they have nothing. The people that we ministered to and had mission trips, were having missions to, they were suffering. They had very little. We would not consider them blessed. But how many times do we hear that they say what? But they are so joyful. But they are happier than we are. They feel closer to God than we are. There's just something about that shows us that blessing has nothing to do with not suffering. In fact, I would suggest that suffering makes us who we are today, to some extent. William Batten, who was head of the New York Stock Exchange and also J.C. Penney, which is, I think, not doing too well, says this: when I hear my friends say that they hope their children don't have to experience the hardships they went through, I don't agree. Those hardships made us what we are. You can be disadvantaged in many ways, and one way may be not having had to struggle. And there's this idea that we in the Western mindset want to avoid suffering as much as possible. But really, we see throughout Scripture and just experience that struggle and suffering is actually what helps us become who we are. Or you read in Psalms, right? These people that love God, these people that follow God, these people that are faithful to God are crying out in ways like this. Psalm 118. From my distress I called upon the Lord answered me and set me in a large place. Literally it means freedom. The Lord gave me freedom. Psalm 86, show me a sign of your favor, that those who hate me may see and be put to shame because of you, Lord. Because you, Lord, have helped me and comforted me. Would you say that the people, next slide, Rashid. Would you say that the people in those verses, I guess not, are blessed? Are not suffering? Yeah, I would say they're not. But yet, there's this nearness to God, right? There's this nearness to God. I can't tell you the times in my life when I felt nearer to God was really those times where I was suffering. Those times where I didn't know how I was going to survive financially, how I was going to be able to afford anything without my parents' help. Those times where I had health issues and the doctors couldn't figure it out or help me. There was a closeness to God in those times of suffering that I wouldn't trade. So being blessed is not being a life devoid of suffering. It does actually mean to be lucky or fortunate. Can we put up that previous slide, right? It does mean to be fortunate that God extends his blessings. The word bless comes from the Greek root, makarios. Turn to your neighbor and say makarios. Okay? It literally means to become large because God gives you his blessings or his advantages, right? Another way to understand blessing and what it means scripturally and in this context is it means to be approved by God. Approved by God. It's almost the sense of congratulations. So one way we could read that, blessed are the poor in spirit, it's almost like in Scripture there's the sense that Jesus is saying, congratulations if you're poor in spirit. But what's interesting is in the original Hebrew, there's actually no verb in the phrases. So there's no is, there's no are. It doesn't say blessed are. There's no verb. Okay? The better way to read this, instead of saying blessed are the poor in spirit, the better way to read it is actually to say, oh blessed the poor in spirit. Or congratulations, poor in spirit. It's like how happy, how joyful are the poor in spirit. It's not a conditional. It's not saying if you're poor in spirit, you're blessed. It's almost a celebration. So another way to read this is, oh, the joy of the poor in spirit, of the mourners, of the gentle, of those who sincerely care for what is right, of those who are merciful, of those who are pure in heart, of those who make peace, of those who are persecuted. Right? Oh, joyful, right, are the poor in spirit. So it's this exclamation of congratulations, right? We see it in Psalm 1. Psalm 1 says this, how blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the seat of the scoffers. And it goes on and on and on. And it's that same idea of how blessed are you if you're poor in spirit. Are we there? Yes. Okay, so now, what does it mean to be poor in spirit? Okay, that term, poor in spirit, comes from the Greek word that means to crouch or cower or bent over like a beggar. Now picture that. What Jesus is saying is you are blessed if the posture of your life is that you are bent and cowering like a beggar. Basically saying you are blessed if you have absolutely nothing that you can offer to anybody. So when you're poor in spirit, that picture is you're a beggar. You got nothing to offer to God. So when the crowd heard this, they would have gasped. Because that made no sense to them. To be poor in spirit to them means that you are basically spiritually devoid of anything. Right? So how can you be blessed if the picture of being poor in spirit is cowering like a beggar with nothing to offer? How is that blessed? I don't want to be that. Here's what it comes down to. Being poor in spirit exposes a very subtle lie in our lives. Being poor in spirit exposes this lie that we give into, that things are better when we are in charge. Right? Being poor in spirit basically makes us come face to face with the fact that for most of our lives, we have given in to this lie that says things work out better when I make the decisions and when I provide for myself. And being poor in spirit, being this beggar that has nothing at all to give, puts you in this place where you've tried everything. You've tried to make it work. You've tried to invest what you could. You've tried to be wise. You've tried to read up all the self-help books. Anything you could possibly try to make it work. You've tried it all, and nothing is working. And it puts us in this place where we can no longer lie to ourselves and tell ourselves it's going to get better. Because being poor in spirit, you understand, is not going to get better on your own. Being poor in spirit prevents us from lying to ourselves that we can fix this. Being poor in spirit prevents us from lying to ourselves that we can figure things out. Because being poor in spirit, you understand, God, I got nothing. I'm out of options. I'm a beggar. When you're a beggar, you have nothing to offer anybody that comes your way. When you're a beggar, all you can do is ask. Right? Go to Taipei main station. I go to Taipei main station a lot, and there's a lot of actually beggars who are Filipino. And for whatever reason, I think they sense they have this Filipino radar. There's a Filipino guy. And they'll ask. They'll say, can I have some money? What are they going to give to me? Nothing. And then so I'll give some money, God bless you, the usual thing. And then sometimes they'll follow me. Can I have some more? Right? And that is the situation where we understand when God says poor in spirit, it's like that. We got nothing in exchange. All we can do is say, God, I surrender because I'm out of options. That's why it says we'll have the kingdom of heaven, right? Because last week we talked about what? The kingdom is where God's will is done. The kingdom presupposes a king. And the king's kingdom is where God's reign and rule and will is done. And what prevents God's will from being done in our lives a lot of time is self-sufficiency. That we think, God, I'm going to do it my way because my way is better. But when you're poor in spirit, you understand we got nothing. R.T. Kendall says this: brokenness is evident when you realize you have no bargaining power with God. You can do only one thing: ask for mercy. You ask for mercy when you have nothing to give in exchange. You have nothing to offer. That's pretty serious. It's not like you can say, God, if you bless me, I'll do this. You got nothing to even give to God. And yet in that moment is where he says you're blessed. Billy Graham would actually replace that word poor in spirit with humble. And he would say, blessed are the humble in spirit. Because if you think about it, what prevents us from depending on God? Pride, isn't it? Like so many times we get backed into this corner and it's so easy to just say, okay, God, I got to trust you. But no, something in us wells up and says, I got to do this myself. Sounds like the garden, right? I got to figure this out myself. I got to work this out myself. That's why in James 4 it says God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And Billy Graham is very wise to, I think, replace that word with humble, because oftentimes, right, the richer we are in things, the poorer we are in our hearts. And when we accumulate so many things, we feel like we're rich in the world, and we are not poor in spirit. That prevents us from fully saying, okay, God, you take charge, because I'm obviously no good at this life thing. I'm no good at living the life that you design. And only when we realize that we lack joy and that we are incomplete will we ever take the step to give our hearts to the one who can make us complete. Otherwise, we'll keep depending on ourselves. Psalm 51:17 says, the sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart, O God, you will not despise. I'm going to show us a clip of a pastor named Nick Vujicic. Anyone heard of him? So he was born with no hands or no arms or legs, and his father was a pastor. They're a pastor family, and they were horrified that when he was born, he had no arms and legs, and the church was just really struggling with, why would God let a pastor's kid be born in this way? And he actually says his mom was so uncomfortable holding him for 4 months, because that's so bizarre. Like, we can't even imagine what that would be like. And so he's going to share about a time in his life where he really came to this place where he wanted to end it, where he was really poor in spirit, and kind of how God used that season to show him he was blessed. Can we play that clip?
Nick's parents gave their fear and even disappointment in their son's disability over to the Lord. They chose to trust God and his promise that he had a plan and purpose, a hope and a future for their son. But as the years passed, Nick, on the other hand, had many challenges trusting in a God that he felt gave him less.
I challenged God. I said, God, I know that I'm a sinner. I know that I won't probably have peace until you're in my heart, but I will not let you in my heart until you answer me, why? Why did you take my arms and legs? Why didn't you give me what everybody else has? And I said, God, until you answer me that question, I will not serve you. And so I wanted to end it. If God wasn't going to end my pain, I was going to end it myself. So at age 8, I tried to drown myself in a bathtub of 4 inches of water. I told my mum and dad, I'm just going to relax in the bathtub. Can you put me in the bathtub? And I turned over a couple times to see if I could do it. I couldn't do it. The thought that stopped me from going through with it was the love for my parents. Because I love them so much, and all they did was love me. And I thought to myself, if I actually went through with this, I pictured my funeral, I pictured my parents, and all I saw was guilt on their shoulders, that they couldn't have done more.
That would be the last time Nick would attempt suicide. But it wouldn't be the last time he would come face to face with those deep issues that made him want to end the pain. Then one day, Nick's mother had him read an article about a severely disabled man. And that man's story made a huge impact on Nick.
I have a choice to either be angry at God for what I don't have or be thankful for what I do have. And my mum, she said, Nick, God's going to use you. I don't know how, I don't know when, but God's going to use you. And those seeds started penetrating in my heart. And that's when I started seeing that there is no point in being complete on the outside when you're broken on the inside. And I found out that God can heal you without changing the circumstance. I gave my life to Jesus Christ when I read John 9 at age 15, where a man was coming through a village, and a man, this blind man from birth, Jesus saw him. People said, why was this man born that way? Jesus said, it was done so that the works of God may be revealed through him. And in 2 Timothy 3 verse 16, it says, all scripture is God-breathed. And I believe God breathed in me life and faith. This faith came over me, this peace came over me, and I felt like God answered my question.
And what was the question and what was the answer?
The question was, why? Why did you make me this way? And the answer was, do you trust me? That's the question. And when you say yes to that question, nothing else matters.
But what was it specifically for you that made you say, Lord, I'm going to trust your word because I know it's true. I'm going to trust you even if I don't know what you have in store for me tomorrow?
Right. Because there was nothing else I could find. There was nothing else that could give me peace. I knew arms and legs wouldn't give me peace anyway, arms and legs alone. I needed to know the truth of who I am, why I'm here, and where I'm going when I'm not here. And I haven't found that truth anywhere else but in Jesus Christ.